Hi and welcome back to episode 3 of the Canary Room. Coming up on the show today, we're going to go around the room and meet some of the new inhabitants. We've got Bird of the Week, lovely little baby Five to introduce you to this week. We've got the redpoll diaries. As always with the redpolls, active little birds, lots of news, lots of frustration, lots of drama. We've got the Canary Room top tips, and today's top tip is on preparing the birds for the second round and running the cock birds back in. We've also got a new feature to the show, which is the Canary Room flashback, so we'll have a look at some of the stories behind some of the birds in the room. We'll finish off with question time. As always, sit back and enjoy the show. So before we see how the chicks are getting on, we're just going to knock up some egg food quickly. What we've got in the bowl is our base mix, and then I'm going to add in the dry food. This year in the Canary Room, there is a slight addition to our egg food mix, and that's Pearl Bianco. Now, many of the fanciers will be aware of a product called Pearl Mobile. It came onto the shelves probably about 2 years ago, maybe 36 months, as an alternative to soap seed. I didn't like it simply because the yellow and the green food colouring in it came everywhere. There is one out now called Pearl Bianco which doesn't have the food colouring in. Effectively, it's made of a variety of different proteins, some seed, flour, and the likes, and some apple. So the great thing with the Pearl Bianco is it soaks for 20 minutes. Then we've also got some Petit Pois in the mix as well, largely because I'll be feeding it to the British and they're very, very fond of those. So I'm going to put our dry egg food mixture in now, and we'll give it a little bit of a mix up. The first nest that we're going to see, you'll remember it started with quite a tragic story. We lost the hen to these babies. You can see now that they're almost ready to fledge the nest. Now I'm just going to give them some soap seed and some egg food. The hen has just been feeding them. What was an absolute delight to me, we saw these two little birds in the last episode. What's an absolute little delight for me was that both of them are blues. So they're both out of the blue cock, and we know the hen that we lost. But they've both turned out to be blues, which is, so you have to look on the bright side of these things, and that's great news for us. So it's a lovely story with the blues. Really, really looking forward to seeing how they turn out and what they look like. What I may do with the blue cock is running with a different hen for the second or third round. Things have been moving since you were last here. So one of the things that have been moving, and not me this time, I'm pleased to say, is the first round reds and 10 of the fifes. So we've got another 8 fifes that we'll show you in a moment. But we've now got these birds on sawdust, so they're away now. They're on the tier wall that we use in the Canary Room. I've put all of the 8 reds together. The fifes I've separated. I've taken 4, there's 10 in total. 6 are in the flight cage, and I've taken 2 lots of 2 and just separated them into pairs separately. And the reason I do this, and when we have a look around, you'll see that some of the birds have, when they were in the weaning cages, have lost tail feathers. Now that's a disaster for showbirds because it means they'll grow back that little bit longer, and you don't really want that. I've not started colour feeding the birds the reds yet, although that will happen very soon, normally around 47, 48 to 50 days after they're born for the first round, and then slightly less after that for the second and third round. But you're looking to make sure that the tails are through, the flight feathers are fully developed, because you want those to stay white while you want the rest of the bird to stay red. More on that in another show. So they've been moved, but the 2 lots of fifes I've kept have started to take a little shine too, so I like the look of them. So I've put them in pairs for now so that they're not suffering from bickering or anything else. That's not to say I'm discarding the birds that are together as a 6. There's some very, very nice birds in there too. But while we're still very much in the breeding season, the focus is on weaning birds and moving them away as quickly and as safely as we can. So behind me we've got the latest birds, two cages of fifes this time, so there's 8 fifes in total here that we're weaning. I'm just going to pop these trays in for them. We'll notice that the birds in both cages actually have been plucked by their mothers, and that's one of the challenges when the hens are looking to go back to the second round to nest. And you've got to get that balance right. You don't want to take them away too early. As I said in the last episode with weaning the birds, you want to make sure they're picking up and feeding themselves. So it won't do them any harm, and the feathers will obviously grow back. You'll also notice now we've got the addition of a second perch in, so they can fly up high. And what we've also got in here is some millet spray, and that's part of the process I use to get them onto hard seed. They are feeding from the hoppers now, so they won't be long before we can move them onto sawdust as well. Very frightening stroke, slightly amusing story with the birds just in this cage here. I came in on Monday morning to be greeted in the canary room by actually this week's bird of the week, who we'll see coming up very, very shortly. And I looked in the cage, and where there were 4 fifes, there was only 1. I looked around the canary room, I could find one quite quickly. The second I found after 2 or 3 minutes, perched on top of the cages, and the third and final bird I couldn't find. And I was almost resigned to the fact that you know, he may have flown and gone and dropped down the back of the cages or whatever, and we'd never find him again. However, I heard a little rustling out of the corner of my ear, saw something out the corner of my eye, and it was actually on the shelves just behind there where we keep the seed and the show cages. So thankfully they're all back in now. They enjoyed their little moment of freedom, but they're all back in feeding. So let's take a closer look. So, welcome back to our new feature, it's Bird of the Week. In the last couple of episodes we've seen a razor, we've seen a redpoll, but I thought this time round we'd see this little lady. Now I say lady, I am hopeful that it's going to be a self-green yellow hen. One to watch, ring number 42, already, and only probably 5, maybe 5.5 weeks old, but you can see there's nice position, she's got good width. The first time she's been in a show cage, she is relatively steady. I really like this bird. I'm really pleased as well because this is out of one of the green yellow hens, or the green yellow hen I brought in from the ALS Kendall partnership, and out of the very best dark buff cock I've got in the room. 2 chicks first round. There's a heavily variegated as well, which isn't to the same quality, although it's not a million miles behind. But this little bird I really like the look of. So we'll keep up and check on her progress. I say her, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a hen. Really difficult with fifes because they change shape so many times between now and the molt. So when they come out the nest, you get a good idea. They then go through what I call the ugly teenage stage, where they're a little bit gangly, their wings go a little bit long, they don't look quite in proportion. Very difficult to judge them. Just keep them in the cages, keep them fed, watered, give them greens, you know, they will come back. But this little beauty, I think it's showing some really nice potential. Nice and up on its legs, it's jaunty, as I say, a million miles to go yet. Hope that her wings have settled down a little bit, but I like the look of her now. Let's have a closer look. We've got some new arrivals in the canary room. The birds behind me here under the white, hatched on Tuesday. We'll have a closer look at them in a minute, and you'll notice that there is 4 whites in the nest and a little dark. Now the dark is out of another hen who just hatched the one, and that's one of the beauties about coinciding the laying and setting of nests, so that if something bad happens in one, if something doesn't quite go to plan, then you can move it. So we've got 5 little chicks in there. We'll have a little look at them now, and then we'll check out a couple of other nests. So in cage 9 behind me, this is the chick we saw hatching on the start of episode 2. You can see, starting to feather up nicely now. Both of the birds in the nest are cinnamons, but interestingly, and I won't get them out because they're at an age where they may or may well not jump out the nest, the other bird is visually clear. It's definitely a cinnamon, it's definitely a hen, but as we'll see, unless when it comes out of the nest, I've had a little look around, it has a cinnamon tail or a cinnamon feather in one of its wings, it will look like a clear. And when it comes to the show season, if that is the case, it will be shown as a clear, even though it's a cinnamon. And this is where rings and really good records make a real difference. But what it does mean is there's 2 hens in that nest, and that's great news. It's lovely to see a couple of cinnamons. We've still got another cinnamon in the nest, and we've got a cinnamon on the sticks as well, so maybe this year, who knows, we'll do that cinnamon special. Another canary room first for us. In the cage just behind me here, we have baby razzers. Now you'll know we brought in a trio of razzers to help again in a foster capacity, although my plan was always to try and breed them first. So I know people have different views about feeders in canary rooms. I haven't necessarily used them massively before. I have with the Norwich. This year they've proved invaluable, and they will be a mainstay moving forward. So the razzers have hatched 3 young. Very interested to see how they develop over the next few weeks. Let's take a closer look at them now. So the final nest we're going to see in today's show is what I am going to call the mystery nest. Now you'll remember from the last episode, the reds that we had here were on 4 Norwich eggs and 2 red eggs. Those were due to hatch just over the weekend. 2 of them did. 4 of them were dead in shell, which was incredibly frustrating. What I had omitted to do was I omitted to mark the eggs. So 2 chicks hatched, 1 looks slightly bigger than the other, but I've no idea what they are. 1 could be a Norwich, 1 could be a red, they could both be reds, they could both be Norwich. But that's not the only reason we're calling it the mystery nest. One of the beauties with the reds is they've been phenomenally good feeders. So at the same time, I had a single chick in cage 7 hatch and 2 chicks hatch in cage 17. Now, 7 and 17 have both got 5 hens in. However, in cage 7, there was also a red egg and a razor egg. In cage 17, and that's a dark hen, there were 5 eggs and a razor egg and an egg from cage 12, which is a clear. What we've got, and I'll show you in a minute, is 5 chicks at varying different sizes, all in this nest. All of them are light or lightish. There could be a fife, a razor, a Norwich and a red all in this nest. Now we won't know until hopefully, touch wood, these birds are weaned and they grow a little bit older rather. We'll take a closer look at them now, but ladies and gentlemen, the mystery nest. So that was the mystery nest. We'll see over the next few episodes how it turns out. I'm quite looking forward to it. I have my fingers crossed there's a Norwich in there. We've got a new feature to the show now. It's the Canary Room flashback. We're going to go to cage 15. We're going to see one of my favourite birds in the shed. We first met her in episode 2, and we can see some footage from that now. We saw her with some babies in episode 6. Heartbreaking. She was the second year last year, 2016. And in episode 6 we saw she hatched 2 from the blue cock, but they didn't survive. And then if we jump forward to episode 30, we see her again, and we see me saying that I must need my head testing because she hadn't bred for the previous 2 seasons, so why would she breed now? Well, clearly I don't need my head testing. I'm absolutely thrilled with this bird. She did hatch 4, 2 didn't make it. I thought, here we go again. But as we take a look at her now in the nest, you can see that she's got 2 beautifully feathered up green young. I'm absolutely thrilled to have got a couple of young out of this hen, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them away, them feeding for themselves. I'm not counting them just yet, but that's the furthest she's taken chicks. So it just shows that perseverance pays. Another thing we need to persevere with is our redpolls. It's time for the redpoll diaries. So in the last episode we saw some of the redpoll eggs underneath the razor. They were due to hatch, they didn't. We thought maybe 1 or 2 of them were full. That didn't prove to be the case, or if they had been full at some stage, they didn't develop into full chicks. The cobalt hen has gone to nest again. This time I'm pleased to say that she hasn't nested in the seed hopper. She's built a nest up. Worryingly though, I'd noticed that a couple of the eggs had been thrown onto the floor, and I can only assume that it was the cockbird that had done that. So I have separated them off for now. She hasn't laid again today. I did that yesterday. But what I have done is one of the eggs unfortunately was broken. The other was full, so I've set that underneath a broody fife. It's the only chance really it's got of making it to full chick. So we've got the cinnamon cobalt there. Let's just take a little look at the divider and the birds in solitary. So if the cinnamon cobalt hen isn't quite playing ball, then fingers crossed that the 2 cobalts that we brought in will. They have built a nest, we'll see that in a second behind me, and they've also laid. Now they've laid 5 eggs. Absolutely no sign of incubating them at the moment, which is not cause for concern just yet. I've had redpolls for a couple of years. I think I've had 8 eggs as being the biggest clutch I've had, so certainly 5, there's possibly a couple of eggs still to come, and the hen shouldn't really sit tight until the full clutch is laid. I am going to leave these with this hen. I've got a razor that is laying at the moment, and you know, I could put some of the eggs in there, but for now I'm going to leave them and just leave them untouched and see if we can't get some redpoll young. We have hatched them in the canary room before, we've rung them, we've got them to 18 days, but we've got them no further than that. So we'll take a little closer look at the cobalts now, and then we'll finish the redpoll diaries by having a little look at the lessers. So the final pair that we've got to see in the redpoll diaries this week is the normal lesser redpolls. I absolutely adore this pair. They have been, they did mate last year, they had chicks last year, we didn't get any of them, unfortunately. I may have to single the cock off because I think he was a little bit of agitating last year. That's fine though because it's a treble breeder, so the hen will have, you know, at least 2 cages, or maybe even 1. I'm going to give them a little bit of soak seed now. I have seen them feeding each other, which is a great sign, so it shows that they're bonded as a pair. Hopefully they'll mate. Very, very rarely will I see the redpolls mate. I have seen it before, but I'd probably have to have a camera on them 24 hours a day. or certainly in daylight hours, to see them actually mate. So I'll give them a little bit of soak seed, all part of the conditioning. And they've got 3 sites on here now. They've picked up, they've moved around, they've messed around, but they haven't built up in earnest. So we'll pop some soak seed in, and then coming up next, we've got the canary room top tips. In this week's top tips, we look at preparation for the second round. Now, so far the season's been mixed. We've had some good successes with some of the light birds, we've got some reds, we've got some razzers. Norwich is still to come for us, we think. And what we're going to do now is look at how we prepare for the second round. We've got 2 different approaches to this. The reds, that we'll see a little bit later on, are in pairs, and that's a slightly different approach. The fifes, as we know this year, are running in single hens. Now we're going to focus specifically on 2 cages, and these are both cages with young in the nest. Now many people will say, when do you reintroduce the cock? And it's a real challenge. There are no fixed and firm dates, and that's the first point to make. The second point to make is study your birds. Keep an eye on them, understand their characters. And by that I mean, I'll run in a minute the cock bird here, just in the top cage, possibly out of shot, in with this hen. Now the young in the nest are blues. They're not the hens or the cocks, but both birds will feed them. Now those birds are feathered up and will be 21 days in 3 or 4 days time. So they're around about 17 days now. Now you'll notice when we take a closer look at the cage that there's already a second nest pan in there, and the hen has built up. She hasn't laid yet for the second round, but I'll run the cock in a moment. The other cage that we'll see is in cage 15. Now the young in there are 21 days already. You'll notice there isn't a second pan in there yet. This hen has proved to be, over the years, slightly less trustworthy. So although for the last couple of days I've run the cock in, I've taken him out as soon as he's mated, and now, and only now, will I put a nest pan in. The young are almost ready to spring the nest. They look good solid chicks, so the chances of losing them at this stage now, I'd say, are slim. So we'll start with cage 3 first, and then we'll move down to cage 15. So with these birds here, with this hen, she's already started to build up. Now I'm putting little bits of nesting material in each day, because I don't want to foul the whole bottom of the nest, for the simple reason that those young that are in there will come out quite quickly, and I don't really want them picking nesting material up. What I have to make sure, however, and it's an important tip, is that there is a plentiful daily supply on this until she's finished building the nest, which will normally be just before she starts to lay. And the reason for that is, if not, with little fluffy chicks in the nest, they'll become the nesting material. So the hen will pluck the chicks, and you'll find, particularly if they take flight or tail feathers, that can ruin the showbird opportunity later in the season. So I'm going to pop some of this in quickly, and then we'll run the cock into here, and then we'll do the same process with cage 15. And what we'll also do in cage 15 is we'll introduce the nest pan. Now we've seen how we make the nest pans up, and there's a YouTube video to check back on. So with that bird, we'll see the hen squatted on the nest. He went on to mate. I'm not sure it was a good connection. And then he went on to feed the young. So in the second round in here, got absolutely no hesitation in leaving him in the day when I'm not around. The same can't be said from the bird below. So I'm going to run a heavily variegated yellow cock in now with a self-green buff hen, and then I'm going to put the nest pan in. So he'd done his job straight away, and it was straight in and straight out with that cockbird. He can get overly aggressive. He's a young bird, he's an unflighted bird, and I don't want to leave the opportunity for anything to happen with the chicks. I'm going to prepare the nest pan now, pop that in, and the hen should pick up and show interest in it almost straight away. We've got 2 other pans to put in as well. Now, the preparation for these birds is slightly different. They don't have young in the nest. They're younger, fostered under different hens as we speak, so they're just as we would prepare the first round. So we'll pop the nest pans in and we'll run the cocks in with them. And then before we wrap up, we'll just see the pair of reds together. So with the 5 canaries, we've got the hens singled off, and with that it's important that you've got different nest pans to use. You'll notice that the first round are always the white plastic pans, and they're fitted with screws to the back of the cage and they're just hooked on in place. When it comes to the second round, when we've got chicks in the nest, mostly, not always, but mostly we'll use a front hanging pan. Now, we can't use the one that goes on the door because that would stop the cock going in to mate. So we've got 2 alternatives. We've got a clay pan, which is the one I'm going to use now, and a plastic pan, which is one that we've already got in use. So I'm going to pop this pan in now, and we'll take a little look at the different pans that we use here in the canary room. So when we've already got young in the nest, that's how we prepare for the second round. So to recap, it's all about the temperament of the cockbird. It's about the stages and the development of the young. It's not about fixed days. So, you know, in some nests where there's a really good feeder, I will run a cock in from 12 or 13 days. If I know that pretty much can guarantee that she'll continue to feed, the cock will mate her. Where I'm less sure, or the cock's a little bit aggressive, I'll leave it later and later and later. What's really important is that you get the chicks that you've got rather than try for more. So I'm going to pop a couple more pans in now. Now these are hens that have had their young moved away, so they're almost like first round pans, and then we'll finish off the top tips by showing how we work when there's pairs together. When we're running pairs together in the canary room, our approach is slightly different. Very, very easy. Very, very easy with pairs. You can see we've got a pair of reds behind me here. The hen is on young. We simply put a second pan to the other side of the cage. It can be an internal pan. No problem with that at all. We'll put that in at around about 16, 17 days. The cock will take on the feeding. One of the things that you need to look for in this scenario though is the hen rebuilding into the nest. And that's one of the challenges that you've got, and that's why you've got to keep an eye and be really, really observant of your birds all of the time. They don't work to day rules, they work to their instincts and their natural instincts. So one of my other top tips is just to keep that eye. You don't want to have them building up in the same nest pan. It won't be clean, it won't be hygienic, and then you've got to build a nest for them and all of those things. So get a second pan in. When you're running pairs together, get a second pan in around about 2 weeks after the chicks have hatched, assuming that both parents are feeding them. As I say, the cock will continue to feed if he's a good cock bird. And those are this week's top tips. One of the beauties of canary keeping and bird keeping is new life. It still gets me after 30 years of keeping canaries. There's nothing I like to see more than new chicks hatching. At the moment though, our 2 pairs of Norwich in the canary room are not playing ball. Whilst we've had razzers and reds and fifes hatch, and we've got quite a lot of chicks in the canary room at the moment, so far, unless the mystery nest turns out, we're yet to hatch in Norwich. Now we have got several Norwich eggs set under one of the roses that are due this weekend coming up. So hopefully the next time that we're in the canary room, we'll have some Norwich babies to show you. It's very, very difficult to put my finger on it with the Norwich. They're in condition, they're laying, they're building up, and I have seen them mate. Now they've been trimmed, and it may just be that it's been a little bit too early for them. What I've got to be careful of though is exhausting the birds and not getting any young at all. And by that I mean the Norwich aren't rearing their own young, so they're in an egg laying cycle. The hen here has built up again, and this will be the third round of eggs that she's laid. Now, despite the fact that there's grit, there's solutions in the water, and there's cuttlefish, I don't want her to struggle from any kind of calcium deficiency. The Norwich, I think we all agree, are a phenomenally handsome bird. I'd like to get some this year, even if it's only half a dozen. So we'll see next time on the show whether we had any joy with those hatching, but in the meantime, let's admire these handsome little beasts. So it's time now for question time. It's becoming an incredibly popular part of the show, thanks to everybody who sent their questions in. I do read them, I will try and respond to them all, and those that are read out on the show will get a little special treat from the Canary room. So the first question comes in from on Facebook from Farid Don, which is, why do canaries stop singing during their molting season, and what is the best food to give canaries during the molt? Well, Farid, the molt here in the UK is some time off yet. Canaries, cock canaries will sing lustfully when they're coming into breeding condition, although they will sing throughout the year. The molt takes a lot out of canaries. I've not known the cocks to stop singing completely. I have known it to be slightly quieter in the canary room during the molt. And that is because, as I say, the birds are going through the molt, so they're out of the breeding condition. Let's not forget, song is there to attract the opposite sex, it's there to attract their mates, so they're possibly just conserving their energy. Food in the molt depends very much on the variety of birds that you're keeping. I like to have egg food. Oyster shell grit, absolutely essential, as is cuttlefish right the way through the molting period. I use mineralised grit blocks as well on the cages when the birds are molting. I'll give soak seed, I'll give egg food, I'll give greens through there. If you think about it, it's the annual replacement of feathers. It's going to take a lot out of the bird. They've got to develop a new plumage, their adult plumage or their second year plumage. So plenty of food, plenty of variety of good quality food, plenty of water, plenty of baths, and that's how I take my birds through the molt. Farid, I hope that answers your question. Thanks very much for sending it in. So the next question on today's show, and the final question for today's show, comes in from Paul Martin. Again, it's on Facebook. Thanks very much, Paul. What's your thoughts on how might get into the shed, and what do you find is the best way to keep on top of them when the warm weather kicks in? The million-dollar question, Paul. Mite can come in on birds, they can come in on in boxes, they can come in on food, they can come in on everything basically. The important thing to say is that northern mite need a host, but they will walk to a host. They're horrible. I despise them. They are particularly, we've got some warm weather at the moment. If they're in the shed, they will increase rapidly in numbers. Red mite will live in the gaps. Northern mite need a host, red mite don't, so red mite will go and feed on a bird. Northern mite, I think, are horrible things. How they come in the shed, do you know, Paul, it is somewhat of a mystery. Can they survive on green food? I don't know, I don't think so. I think the reality is, as our birds, you know, as we bring birds in, as we take birds to shows, as we you know, as we have our cages, I think that mite are just there, and they just exist despite what we do. How do you keep on top of them? Vigilance, vigilance and vigilance. You know, I use a number of different solutions here. The Dettol, the lavender Dettol, which we've seen that we use when preparing the nest pans, has been effective. I've seen only a smattering on the back of a pan of red mice. That's been good news. I powder the birds, I spray the birds. I know some people use Frontline, I haven't as yet, although it's something I may well try in the future. The key though with mine, as I've said before, is just vigilance, Paul. I will have them in this shed. I am fastidiously clean with the birds. I'll hoover, I'll change the cage floor regularly. I'll look in the nooks and crannies, I'll use the diametic earth, I'll use everything. You have to work on the assumption that you've got mite in the shed. Thinking that you haven't, that you've solved it all, I think is probably a little bit of blind hope. Stay vigilant. Things to look out for in the nests. If you've got, first and foremost, if you pick a nest pan out, you'll normally feel, particularly northern mice, you'll feel them walking up your arms after you've done it. That's one of the things to look for. Second thing to look for, when you've got your chicks in the nest, look to see what colour they are. Now, I'm not talking about feather colour, I'm talking about the colour their skin is. If they're pinky, that's fantastic. The chances are there's no mite. If they're a yellowy, more jaundiced colour, and particularly if you start to see little redness underneath the wings and around the legs, what that can mean is that there are mite in the nest, and they'll hang in those little bits under the new birds, the baby chicks, and what the mothers will do is they'll try and peck them and get them, and that continual pecking can lead to bruising under the wings. Paul, it's a great question. I hope I've gone some way to answer it. That's all we've got time for on the show today. As always, check out our YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook. There's lots of content and photographs from the Canary room that go up there on an almost daily basis. Follow us on Instagram too. And until next time, take care. That wasn't a very genteel boop, Dan. Here I am trying to take this seriously. The cameraman's just gone, hang on, I'll just go and get me tea. It's alright, I'll get me coffee, shall I?
It'll last forever. I'm running out of battery here.
Are you? Okay. Okay.
Right, that was easy.
Yeah, great.
It's a wrap.
Cool.